Welcome into the LSU Sports Insider podcast. Today is Thursday, September the 19th. I'm Zach Ewing. With me are LSU beat writer Reed Darcey and our columnist Scott Rabalais. We are a couple of days away from LSU versus UCLA at Tiger Stadium. We talked about this during Monday's pod, guys. It's one of those games that sounds really good when you see it on the schedule and wow, UCLA's coming to town. UCLA's not very good, at least not from what we've seen in the first two games. So this may be another home blowout.
It should be for LSU. I think it's kind of a test, can they start to make progress getting towards what is the heart of their schedule right in the middle. You have the 4-game stretch, Ole Miss, at Arkansas, A&M, Alabama. And that's going to be the test that they need to build for that. But, yeah, it's not people who remember LSU going to the Rose Bowl and getting shoved around 3 years ago by UCLA. This is not that UCLA team. They're really bad on offense, or they've been bad so far in their first two games. And they come in here in the heat of a day game in Tiger Stadium. It's going to be a tough one for the Bruins, I think. But, we have to see.
Rab, I'm glad you mentioned that game in the Rose Bowl. I think LSU fans remember that game pretty well as sort of like the beginning of the end for the Ed Ogeron era.
The Sissy Blue Shirts game.
Yeah, the Sissy Blue Shirts game. Who could forget? And that game, I believe, right after Hurricane Ida. So that game was kind of tied to it as well. So, yeah, UCLA's rebuilding, first-year head coach, brand new conference. They barely beat Hawaii, and then they got blown out at home by Indiana in their Big Ten opener. So not your normal Big Ten.
Not Ohio
power.
State, not Michigan. Indiana beat them by 4 touchdowns.
Indiana might be pretty good, by the way, but that's another subject. Right. Yeah, it seems a lot's happened in 3 years, hasn't it? That seems like a long time ago that LSU went to UCLA. So we shall see what happens. We're going to preview the game, but we're also kind of from the context of what do we want to see from LSU in this game, considering that the outcome, it's a 24-point spread. The outcome is probably not really in doubt. If it is, then LSU has all sorts of other problems. So we'll talk about it from that perspective. Before we get going, I want to let you know that the LSU Sports Insider podcast is sponsored by Waste Pro. Tigers fans, if you're planning a tailgate or event, keep your guests comfortable with portable toilets from Waste Pro. Call 225-744-6400 and mention the LSU Sports Insider for a special offer. Also want to let you know, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the LSU Sports on NOLA.com YouTube channel, posting podcast twice a week. We also have videos from Brian Kelly press conferences, from some other player interviews, practice highlights when we can get them, which is not really often now that the season has started, but we'll also do some pregame stuff as the season gets going too. So subscribe to that channel. You can also find us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. All right, we will begin our breakdown of LSU UCLA. First, we're going to take a quick break. We will be back with you after this word from our sponsors in 60 seconds.
Fellas, it's clear why Caesars brought us together. This is the ultimate quarterback roundtable.
I think I know why we're here.
What? Quarterback, high school, Oklahoma? I thought that was a musical.
Garth, I think you're here because when people use Caesars Sportsbook, they earn with Caesars rewards. Things like celebrity chef dining, Vegas vacations, even tickets to your show.
This app is over the top. There's the idea.
Bet with Caesars Sportsbook. Earn Caesars rewards and see your favorite quarterback, Garth Brooks, in concert.
Hey, you can't throw like that.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional health care for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You give me
LSU versus UCLA. It's a 2:30 p.m. kickoff, probably more like 2:45 at Tiger Stadium. It's on ABC. It's going to be hot. At least it's not supposed to rain because, as we know, it never rains in Tiger Stadium.
Never.
But I do want to talk for a minute, guys, about what's at stake in this one for LSU because, like I said, Reed, if LSU finds itself in a dogfight here, that probably raises some more existential questions about who they are this season.
LSU should win pretty easily. They should get off to a fast start. I think if you look at the last 3 games, LSU has not gotten off to a fast start. Y'all talked a little bit about that on Tuesday's pod. I think if LSU gets off to a fast start, gets an early lead, then fans can sort of feel good about this game against UCLA. But like you said, this point spread is about 24 points. It's like that for a reason. LSU should win. It should win by at least 3 scores, and it shouldn't have much trouble getting out to an early lead and getting off to a fast start, unlike it did last week against South Carolina. So if LSU has a competitive game, a close game, and this thing really lingers into the third quarter, then we'll come back on the Monday, Tuesday show and sort of unpack some fresh concerns, So just look to see how quickly LSU starts, and if they start out slow, if they stumble out the gates again, that can be a sign for concern. But if they start well, then I think it's a step in the right direction.
I mean, even against Nichols, they got the safety and a touchdown quick. It's 9-0. Okay, this is what they needed. They're going to blow the Colonels back to Thibodeau. And it didn't really happen. I mean, it was like the late third quarter before LSU finally pulled away in that game.
Exactly. And, of course, obviously last week, huge deficit. The second biggest road comeback for LSU since 1940, coming back from 17-0 down. So you don't want to see anything like that if you're an LSU fan. Like Reed said, LSU is going to win the game. But it's in this case, style matters, to a degree. You want to win convincingly. This is a UCLA team that scored 2 offensive touchdowns so far this season in their first 2 games. 1 rushing, 1 passing. That's pretty bad. They're averaging 14.5 points a game. They're last or second to last in the 18-team Big Ten in like everything offensively. But again, LSU has had enough struggles, especially to start the games, where you go, all right, you give the other team a little chance to build some confidence and momentum, and maybe it's more of a game than you figure. This is a game LSU should be taking out Garrett Nussmeier sometime late in the third quarter and putting in Ricky Collins or even A.J. Swan at quarterback and seeing some other players. It'll be interesting to see. One thing that could help them start, what is their running back situation going to be like? Obviously, we saw Durham do so well against South Carolina. They seemed to put a balance in the offense. Once they got that going, South Carolina really had a tough time stopping LSU the rest of the game. LSU kind of stopped themselves in the red zone a couple of times. But we'll see if that happens. But it's a game where LSU needs to polish and improve and correct some mistakes and try to get better leading up to that Ole Miss game, which, of course, is maybe a referendum on the entire season. I
mean, that was the theme of our Tuesday show was, what does LSU need to do over these next 2 weeks? Plus, then they have a bye week to get ready for Ole Miss on October the 5th. Have that date right? I think it's the
12th.
The 12th, I'm sorry. Yeah, the 5th is the bye week. So before we dig into our breakdown, our injury report is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic. And we don't get a lot of injury updates. The SEC mandates it for conference games, but for non-conference games, we don't get a ton of updates.
Kind of flying blind.
We can tell weeks, you, Chris Womack, Chris Hilton, Deshaun Womack, missed last week. Do we have any idea on whether they'll play? I mean, any guesses, guys?
Not really. We should find out later today when Brian Kelly has his weekly Thursday press conference. But yeah, Chris Hilton has sort of felt like he's been week to week with that bone bruise in his ankle. We don't really know much about his recovery. We don't know much about Womack or Jordan Allen either, but we could find out later today when BK talks again. So we'll see.
It's really up to him whether he wants to. He doesn't have to do it in these non-conference weeks. Right. So today's show is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare partner in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. Okay, let's break into our breakdown, and we'll start, as we do, when LSU has the ball. Rab, I think you kind of mentioned one question people have is, after the breakout performance last week, what's the running back rotation look like? Are are we going to see some of those other guys less often now? Are we still? I don't know. Do we have a new RB1 on this team? I guess that's the question that's going to be answered.
Well, that is the question, and Brian Kelly was asked that Monday, and he was pretty non-committal, I would think, about whether Durham was going to be the starter or take over more of the load. But you can't totally abandon Josh Williams. Jackson has been a little bit disappointing, I guess you would say, to start the season. We're not seeing as much production out of him as you expected. I remember asking Reed when I came back from the Olympics. I said, "What has he been doing in practice?" He said, he's been running over people. Right? I mean, you told me
we all mentioned Caleb Jackson as our breakout player in camp.
Sure,
to a man. Yeah.
And that has just not materialized, but doesn't mean it can't, or something like that. But Durham has got he's got that nice, maybe low center of gravity. He going way back as I do in these podcasts. Kind of reminds you of a Dalton Hilliard back in the day for LSU and the Saints. Kind of a bowling ball, like I said, just a big stocky running back. That's he was just slipping tackles, and Brian Kelly said a nice patience waiting for things to open that maybe the other running backs could learn a thing from. But Josh Williams is so good at getting the tough yards, at slipping out for passes, for helping you pass block and stuff like that. I don't think we're going to see his role diminish completely. But it's going to be interesting because, as Kelly said, the offense doesn't have to be balanced like 250 yards rushing and 250 yards passing. Balance to him means, and I think it's correct in the modern game, it means being effective when you need to be. And LSU had not been effective until Durham started carrying the ball so well and almost rushed for 100 yards and got those 2 touchdowns, got them going offensively. So I think we'll see more of him. Why not? Whether he's the starter, I'm guessing not, but I think we'll definitely see more of him and give him a chance to see how he can perform against another team. Was it just a flash in the pan, or is he going to be something they can sustain? The
other thing, Reed, is like Rab touched on this, but getting all of the carries is not just about how many yards you gain. Like, can Caden Durham be the pass blocker that Josh Williams is? Right. Can Caleb Jackson improve in that area? So there's different elements here. Besides just, he had 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. He ought to get all the carries. Like, this isn't fantasy football.
Yeah, I don't think that's the way football works anymore, especially with the situation that LSU has right now. Caden Durham's not going to get 20-plus touches a game, right? It's going to be divided amongst those 3 backs. And I think just after the South Carolina game, what Kelly said about Caden Durham was pretty interesting. He said, what he did today set a standard for what we're looking for from our running backs going forward. And he said, hey, this is the SEC. You have to break tackles. You have to force people to miss, and you have to fight for extra yards. I think he was saying, like, that's what we were missing. He didn't say that explicitly, but that's sort of the subtext of what he was saying. Like, we were missing someone who could create his own yards, break tackles, and really provide that spark that LSU was really lacking. And so I think when you look back at the South Carolina game and how LSU sort of finally figured out its run game, it really comes down to 2 things, and we're going to have a story up on this tomorrow morning on theadvocate.com. It's more so like Caden Durham's explosiveness combined with a little slight adjustment that LSU made in the run game. And in the second half, they sort of simplified things. They went to a concept that was working in that game, and they went to a concept that they really excelled at last year. It was more like a outside zone kind of run, and they really kept hammering it, and they found success. It worked. It took advantage of South Carolina's aggressive pass rush by getting the edge rushers outside, forcing them to sort of fan upfield instead of crashing down, and that really opened up a hole outside the B gap. So when you combine that little tactical adjustment with Caden Durham's explosiveness and the yards he created after contact, I think that's sort of the recipe that LSU used to finally open things up in the run game, and I think you'll see more of that moving forward.
All right, so you can check that out, theadvocate.com/LSU, and read Reed's story. That's difficult to say. I was halfway out with it before I realized how difficult that was.
Listen to Reed. He describes it very, very well. I enjoy hearing him describe the nuances of the game.
The rest of the offensive game plan. The passing game has obviously been really sharp, I think, through 3 weeks. I mean, that's probably been the bright spot of anything for LSU. And for UCLA, like, just hasn't been very good in general, Rab. So what sort of game plan do you think we see here? Is it a typical big favorite, establish the run, just run all over them? Are they going to try to work on some stuff? What do you think we see?
I think, well, obviously it depends. Maybe you can finally get a Chris Hilton back. I'll believe he's back when he's back, so we'll leave him out of it for now. But I think, establish the run for sure. Maybe work on some of the things that Reed described. Take some shots downfield. You want to, you need that explosiveness. Maybe the passing game, they've been really good at the short to intermediate passes. Not as many long passes, although of course they hit a big one on that that 4th down play to keep the drive alive late against South Carolina to Kyron Lacey. But it's going really well. I think Garrett Nussmeier, you need to keep throwing because every pass he makes is more experience for him that he's trying to gain. He just started the bowl game, and then he obviously has these 3 starts this season. So every start, every drive, every possession, every pass is crucial for his development. And we saw you said the passing game is going well, and it is, but he threw 2 pick sixes that got called back. It's true. The second one was really a bad pass. The first one he's going down, he's getting horse collared, but the second one is just a really bad pass. And LSU was fortunate to benefit from a, so shall we say, controversial blindside block call on South Carolina that erased the play. I thought it probably was. Some people don't.
If it wasn't controversial, it was at least extremely well timed from LSU's perspective. It was very lucky that it happened at that time.
Very well. Like that could have made the difference between LSU being 2-1 or 1-2 right now. So, yeah, I think we'll see all facets of the offense, and not only. Well, I'm thinking of it. Not only does Garrett Nussmeier develop, Joe Sloan as a play caller needs to continue to develop too, and they don't need to dumb down or vanilla the offense to any large degree. They need to be working on all facets of it, and the running game, the passing game, the play action pass. Joe likes a lot of motion, but I would think, remember down the goal line situation, they got like run, and they threw that 4th down pass on the right flat. It just didn't look very good.
Well, I think in that scenario, if you're struggling to run the ball and punch it in, then it makes things so much more difficult than they need to be, right? We've talked about the short yardage situations, the red zone troubles. A lot of that is because LSU hasn't had a consistent run game to trust and to lean on through its first 3 games. So I think if you figure out the run game, then sort of the rest of the red zone offense kind of opens up a bit. So we'll see how LSU improves in that regard. Can they run the ball better within the 5? I think it's another key that we should be looking out for.
We're bringing that up, and the winning touchdown by Josh Williams was a very nice play. They motioned from left receiver from left to right, and it kind of drew the South Carolina defense's attention to that side, and then they ran off tackle left, the kind of run Reed's been talking about.
Exactly what I was talking about.
With Josh Williams for the game-winning touchdown. So that was good, but again, I think Joe Sloan, like his quarterback, like some elements of this offense are maturing, and it's just going to take some time. And obviously the season's going on, and this is a good time to, like I said, not to just shut things down, but to continue to use all aspects of your offense to try to get better.
And before we get off the subject, Zach, I want to bring up Garrett Nussmeier. He can really throw the ball in this game. He can throw vertically. He can throw deep. Last week, UCLA has a small sample size. They've only played 2 games, but Indiana's quarterback, whose name is escaping me, he threw for over 300 yards. I believe 307 is something he did only once last year, so it's the second most yards he's thrown for in the last 2 seasons. He's a transfer from Miami, Ohio. He had a really productive, efficient day against UCLA's secondary. So I think Garrett Nussmeier can have a big day. He can throw for a couple, long plays, long explosive plays, and the LSU offense can work that way.
Yeah, I mean, again, from the context, and I don't want to make one game way bigger than the others, but let's be honest, this Ole Miss game that's on the horizon is really what LSU's focus needs to be headed toward. And so look, the offense has been good so far. It's going to need to be great on that day. Like it needs to, what do you need to score to beat Ole Miss? 30, 35, 40 points? I mean, you're going to need to score.
Last year.
So you need to be hitting on all cylinders. And this week against UCLA, next week against South Alabama are sort of the canvases where you can kind of mess around and try to make this as well-rounded as it can possibly get before you get to Ole Miss.
Yeah, and you've got 2 chances, UCLA, South Alabama, and then your bye week. So look to see how LSU fine-tunes its offense. Look to see if it smooths out some of the rougher edges that we've seen over the first 3 games. And then if they keep improving, if they build on those things, then I think LSU fans and LSU in general is going to be confident going into that game.
Yep. All right, so our star player segment, which is brought to you by Waste Pro. Ensure your tailgate or event is a hit with clean and convenient portable toilets from Waste Pro. Rent yours today. As we do on our Thursday podcast, we're going to kind of highlight some star players from the other team that you should look out for. Quite frankly, looking at UCLA's stat, they've only played 2 games. They haven't played 3, but it's a little bit hard to find star players for UCLA. I picked out their linebacker, Kane Madrano, who has 14 tackles including 4 tackles for loss through 2 games. And then wide receiver Rico Flores, only 5 catches, but for 133 yards, including a 53-yard touchdown, which is their only passing touchdown of the year so far. He's a transfer from Notre Dame, also caught in pretty limited action with the Fighting Irish last year. He did have a 60-yard touchdown catch against Pitt. So LSU's defense kind of been subject to big plays thus far, and going back to last year. Kind of. If you go back to last year, very subject to giving up big plays. So Rico Flores is a guy to watch that secondary is going to want to keep track of and not let him get behind them. And with that said, we'll move into when UCLA has the ball. Okay, again, UCLA's offense has been putrid so far. They've only scored 2 touchdowns. That includes a game against Hawaii and a home game against Indiana. Indiana may be pretty good, but that's not a good output. But as we've seen, Reed, like LSU's defense giving up big plays to Colin Guggenheim and Nichols. So I don't think you can sit there and say, this is no problem for them.
If I had a nickel for every time we mentioned Colin Guggenheim's name on this podcast, I mean, I might be able to retire and not do any more podcasts. You know, I'm shocked how many times we've mentioned that. But
you'd have like 10 nickels, which is not a lot, but it's still a lot. It's still weird that it's that many.
At his age, you can invest. You can build up.
Yeah, Colin Guggenheim, John Curtis kid. I've seen him play a few times in high school, and he does those kinds of things.
Now you just mentioned you're just trying to get yourself nickels now.
Yeah, so that 67-yard touchdown, LSU gave it up against Nichols, and then they gave up something very similar to South Carolina the following week. Lenora Sellers ran for, I believe that one was 75 yards. It was a very similar play that South Carolina ran to Nichols. It was sort of like a read option with a jet motion coming in. And the reason why I think LSU gave up that play, if you look at it, it's sort of like a microcosm of the reasons why LSU has given up so many explosive plays this season. Because one, you fit the run poorly, and then you miss a tackle, right? So on the run, the Nora Sellers run, Greg Penn, the motion, he drifted too far to the left, allowed himself to get sealed off by a pulling guard, which opened up the rushing lane for Sellers. And then Sage Ryan comes down from the safety spot, and he takes a bad angle on Sellers, and he misses the tackle. So I think it's those 2 issues are the reason why LSU has given up so many explosive plays. It's not fitting the run well, and then it's not tackling well at the 2nd and 3rd levels. Those are 2 things that LSU struggled with last year and never really fixed. So if you look at this year, you want to see LSU improve those things. They are fixable things, right? There are things that can get better. So you've got 2 more chances to do that until Ole Miss comes to town, because Ole Miss, its offense will take advantage if you can't play that fundamentally sound football that Brian Kelly is looking for.
It's an ominous prospect, the Ole Miss offense, because Lane Kiffin, say what you want, he can be kind of a goofball, but he can exploit weaknesses in other defenses, and this defense has got some weaknesses. They've gotten better at causing negative plays and disruptive plays in the other team's offense. And Reed just wrote about a player who did that to the Max Saturday, Braden Swinson. He was SEC Defensive Player of the Week, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery. Mm-hmm. That's where LSU has gotten is somewhat better, and they're pretty good. Their best stat defensively is sacks. I think they ranked 5th in the SEC in sacks, but gap integrity and on the run, Rocket Sanders had. He just takes to the outside. Whitweeks crashes inside for some reason. He doesn't stay at home, and he just runs right through where he was.
That run, nobody set the edge. Whitweeks was hovering too close to the line of scrimmage. He didn't set the edge. He bounced around.
So these things are still plaguing LSU. Is it a little better? Yeah, but not entirely. And you see they're in a 16-team league. LSU's 14th in this and 15th in that defensively. I mean, their numbers are still not great. And I don't know if they hold UCLA to 10 points and 312 yards, is that going to prove much about their improvement? I don't know, because as we've established, they've been a very anemic offense so far this season. But you got to start somewhere, and you've got to start showing them more. Just not the flashy stuff, but the fundamentals of playing good defense, and maybe Blake Baker's learning his personnel a little better. They moved Harold Perkins from one side to the other that seemed to pay some dividends, and players like Swinson and Shand and some other guys are playing well, but it's it's still very much a work in progress. But they've got some time. They've got some time to. This is a perfect scenario for the LSU defense to me. Two opponents that you should beat, as we were talking about off the air. Reed said South Alabama's offense is probably a lot better than UCLA's offense, and but then you got a week to heal up and look at what you're not doing well to get ready for Ole Miss, which is going to be a challenge. LSU's not going to be favored in that game. Ole Miss is going to be a big favorite, but it's going to be the biggest test of the season probably offensively for LSU in any game.
Do you sense a theme here? We keep everything in this week, and it's going to be the same next week, by the way, is in context of Ole Miss, because that is the benchmark for LSU season. They win that game somehow, and then that opens up all sorts of doors for the rest of the season. You lose that one, and quite frankly, you're trying to get to 8 or 9 wins and get to the best bowl game possible, and the college football playoff kind of takes, not that it would be impossible, but it would be certainly unlikely at that point. So that is the context. And look, what you guys are talking about, Blake Baker was brought in to quite a bit of fanfare in the offseason.
Quite a bit of cash, too.
Yeah, he's going to change. Exactly, yeah, good point. He's going to change the scheme. It's going to fix everything. LSU's defense can't possibly be worse. And it's not worse.
No.
But it's not better enough so far. I mean, I think it's fair to say that.
Yeah, I think it's better in the regard that it's creating more pressure. It's creating more havoc. It's being more proactive, and it's being more opportunistic. And what I mean by that is last year the LSU defense played about as conservatively as it possibly could. It sort of, when it was on the field, it sort of hung on for dear life and just hoped that the offense, made a couple mistakes and that derailed their drive. This year they're doing much more of forcing the issue, right? They're dialing up blitzes, they're creating pressure, they're using all these creative disguised blitzes, and that's resulted in more pressure, more havoc, more turnovers, more sacks, more hurries and pressures. And I think that's one thing that you can look at the LSU defense and say, okay, you're making progress with this. But that being said, they are still giving up too many explosive plays. The tackling has been an issue. The run fits have been an issue. LSU can clean up those things, but if they don't, then it's going to be a little disappointing to see, LSU overhauled their entire defensive staff, paid a lot of money to a lot of coaches, and you're still struggling with these same fundamental issues. If that stays an issue throughout the rest of the season, then I think it can be a disappointment. But if you improve those things, then LSU has the makings of a defense that can do enough for LSU's offense to hang with Ole Miss and maybe win that game.
And to me, the bar is pretty high this week. UCLA has 1 touchdown in each game. It's not like they've been playing juggernaut defenses. So if you can't hold down this UCLA defense, it's a sign to me that not that much progress has been made. So we'll see. It's a high bar for that LSU defense this week, and we'll see if they can meet it. We're going to go into our Keys of the Game. Today's Keys of the Game segment is proudly sponsored by Associated Grocers. Join our team and support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. So we've probably mentioned our Keys of the Game in passing or more upfront. But if you had to boil it down to one thing, Rab, what is your key to Saturday's matchup with UCLA?
Yeah, just coming out with focus and some intensity to start the game. We're talking about this game like as a foregone conclusion. The Tigers can't actually do that. I mean, it is important, as we've said. They have not gone off to a good start in any of these 3 games so far. It's important that they get off and get up, 10-0 in their first 2 drives or 14-0. Just give UCLA no hope of hanging around, because they're still a Power 4 team. It seems strange to say that. It's still a Power 4 team, a Big Ten team. It's also very strange to say. And you got to say that at some point maybe they're going to break out. Maybe they're going to have that game where they put it together. You don't want it to be against you. So you want LSU. LSU wants to come out and establish the offense very early. The kind of balance we've been talking about. Give the defense to give them a stop or two. If LSU can go touchdown, force a punt, touchdown, the game's pretty much decided already. So that's the idea. Come out with focus that you're the better team, and for the first time this season, and really prove it on the field.
I'll say on defense, limit explosive plays. It's the one thing the defense needs to improve upon and clean up. If they can do that, then it's a sign of growth. It's a sign of progress. and it's something they need to clean up moving forward. So I think if they prevent UCLA from completing long passing plays or breaking off long runs, then they can build on that and take it into Ole Miss.
The stat package we look at it at the games, it says big plays, anything over 15 yards or more. So
15 passing, 10 rushing.
15 passing, 10 rushing. So how many of those plays can LSU give up and you still feel like they've done a good job?
Well, against South Carolina, I believe South Carolina had 7 rushes of at least 10 yards and a handful of passes of at least 15 yards. South Carolina's offense probably isn't good enough to do that consistently week to week. So you want to see that come down, especially the runs, maybe 1 or 2 tops, against this UCLA team. Like it has to be way lower than it has been in previous weeks.
In modern football, you're going to give up some 15-yard passes like that. That's going to happen. But you can't be giving up 7 10-yard runs a game. No. You just can't do it, especially against an offense like UCLA's that struggled. So I agree with both of those. I think they both kind of come down to focus, right? Like focus on the game plan, execute the game plan, show that you can play at your ceiling, because LSU's number 16 in the country. They haven't played at that ceiling. I don't think they've played like the 16th best team in the country. Yeah, you could argue maybe they did for a little while against USC, maybe in the second half when they came back against South Carolina, but you need to see that for 4 quarters at some point, and this may be the week. So Tiger Fans Associated Grocers is hiring. Join a team committed to the success of independent retail grocers. Apply today at Associated Grocers and be part of something great. We're going to take our second break here, our final break. We'll come back with our sports betting segment. We'll go around the SEC, and we'll wrap it up with some LSU UCLA predictions. Back right after this.
Since 1988, Classic Industrial Services, Inc. has led the industry in specialty contracting. From thermal insulation to scaffolding, coatings, and beyond, we cover it all. Every minute matters in our commitment to quality and safety. We're here to serve with roofing, siding, heat trace, and refractory services. Visit classicindustrial.com for more information.
So our thanks to our sponsors, we're going to move right into our sports betting segment. And the Queen of Baton Rouge proudly sponsors the LSU Sports Insider's sports betting segment with Thomas Casale. Experience the thrill of game day at 1717 Kitchen and Cocktails, your premier destination for elevated sports entertainment. Thomas told us on Tuesday's podcast he liked LSU minus 22. He's getting what they call closing line value because that's moved up. It's now LSU minus 24. So now he's going to go into another SEC game and give us one of his favorite picks for the weekend. Here's Thomas.
Hey, everyone. So earlier this week, I gave out LSU covering the big spread against UCLA. I think they roll. But the big game in the SEC this weekend, Tennessee going to Oklahoma. Now, Tennessee was a 7.5-point favorite. The Vols have looked sensational this year. But despite a lot of the money and bets coming in on Tennessee, that number has now moved. And at DraftKings Sportsbook, it's Oklahoma getting 7 points instead of 7.5. So that's an interesting line movement. It's actually at 6.5 some places. So, I'm at the point now where I kind of like Tennessee a little bit. I get taking the home dog here. But it reminds me a little bit of Texas, Michigan, where people are taking the home dog just to take them. Oklahoma didn't look good at all versus Houston. And Tennessee, I just think their offense and defensive lines are going to dominate in this game at some point. I do think it's going to be a competitive, close game. But if you can get 7 points or lower, I like laying the points with the Vols. I think they remain undefeated.
All right, and LSU fans, you can catch all the sports action at the Queen Casino's DraftKings Sportsbook Bar and 1717 Kitchen and Cocktails. Top-notch screens, live betting. It's the ultimate spot to watch your favorite teams and enjoy a cold brew or a signature cocktail. The Queen Casino is the only land-based casino in Baton Rouge and your go-to for game day or any day. Visit today and elevate your sports watching experience. So Thomas likes Tennessee laying the points against Oklahoma. That's the game of the week in the SEC as we go around the SEC with Classic Industrial Services, because at Classic Industrial Services, every minute matters. And as we know in the SEC, it just means more. So we have 4 conference games this weekend, guys. Obviously, Tennessee, Oklahoma is the best one. You've got kind of a toilet bowl with Florida, Mississippi State. You have a kind of a mismatch with Vandy going to Mizzou. And then the other one, actually fairly interesting, I think it's Arkansas at Auburn is the 4th one. So what do you like in those games? Which one do you have your eye the closest on outside of LSU?
I'm constantly watching Florida because of the whole Billy Napier situation, and you couldn't probably say there are 2 teams that are more disappointed going into the game, coming off of what they did last week, than from the Florida Mississippi State. Florida loses at home, got pushed around by Texas A&M in the swamp. Mississippi State got crushed by Toledo. They just got crushed
at home.
Toledo at home. Neither one of these teams looks really good. Florida, you feel like this is a game they should win, but boy, things are just so dismal. You know, they're booing Billy Napier as he's leaving the field, and he's like, I would be booing too. It's like, that's pretty bad.
That's always a bad sign when you reach that point.
Yeah, and everyone's already speculating who might the next coach be. You know, when's he going to get fired? You know that sort of thing. And after it's the first year of the Jeff Lebby era, Miss State's not looking too hot either so far. So this is it's just, how bad can they be? Which bad team? One of these bad teams will win the game. Which bad team will it be? I'm kind of favoring the Cowbells at this point, but I don't know. And Arkansas and Auburn is interesting. I mean, obviously both these teams they've shown some sparks, and then they've shown some bad play. Maybe the winner of this game, I think, gets bowl eligible, and the loser probably doesn't.
Gonna have to fight for it. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And Florida had the Board of Curators meeting after their loss to Texas A&M on a Sunday, which is never a good sign either, that they came in on a Sunday to talk about Billy Napier's future. But they didn't fire him. They do have a bye week coming up after this game in Starkville, which makes me think maybe win or lose, Billy Napier's out, that they're going to use the bye week as the opportunity. I don't know. We'll see. But Tennessee, Oklahoma, clearly the headliner, Reed. Oklahoma's 3-0. They're not that impressive of a 3-0. They barely beat Houston. They kind of let Tulane hang around last week. Can they put up with Tennessee's offense? I mean, Tennessee's offense is absolutely rolling.
Tennessee looks really, really good.
They might be the best team in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're number 1 in scoring offense, number 3 in scoring defense. When you combine what they're doing offensively with what they're doing defensively, James Pierce off the edge, one of the best defenders in the country. I think Tennessee is super scary. I think they're legit, and I think they probably go to Norman this weekend and prove to the country that they're the real deal. If you look at their offense looks a little bit different than it does in years past. They're using more 12 personnel. They're running the ball more. Obviously, they've had a few easy games to start. Will that continue? Will that keep up against a real SEC opponent? We'll see. But I think they're super legit. I love the quarterback, Nico Iamaleava. He looks really good. He's got a shot to win the Heisman. I think, and then when you add, this sort of revenge factor for Josh Heupel and going against Oklahoma, he was the quarterback of the last Oklahoma team that won the national title,
2000.
Yeah. 2000, and then he was the offensive coordinator before Bob Stoops hired Lincoln Riley back in 2015. So a lot of shared history there, a lot of interesting dynamics there. I think it's a really fun, really interesting game that I think Tennessee probably handles pretty well. So Oklahoma, real quick, I really like Tulane. I think Tulane's really good. so it's not a huge
best
deal.
Two-loss team in the country.
Yeah, I really like Tulane. I got a soft spot for Tulane. So, but yeah, I think Tennessee wins.
This game is double jeopardy for Brent Venables, the Oklahoma coach, right? Because you get Josh Heupel coming in, as you say, and they can be fired up to try to beat him and stuff like that. But by the end of the game, they might be saying, "Well, we hope he's our coach again one day. Will he come back one day to be our coach?" And of course, Brent Venables, I don't think he's anywhere close to getting fired in anything Oklahoma, but this is this game counts for a lot, for him with that guy coming back and having his team on a roll so much, and you're not certainly not bad, but Oklahoma is not looking like a top 5 team like Tennessee does right now, and maybe they're top 2 or 3 team, as you said, Reed. So it's a fascinating match. You knew it was going to be before the season, and it's even heightened now because Tennessee looks so impressive, going to that game in a way that we haven't seen Tennessee look for a very long time.
Yeah, not non-conference wise, not much going on in the SEC. Honestly, UCLA, LSU is the best game by quite a bit. I think Kentucky plays Ohio, who's 2-1.
It goes to show you that the SEC Nation show is coming to Baton Rouge for this game. That there's not a lot going on.
Yeah, there's not that much going on in the SEC, but Tennessee Oklahoma is a legit headliner. And I will say, as impressive as Tennessee has looked, it reminds me a little bit of the conversation around the Saints, right, where they've looked so good so far. But what happens when they get pushed? What happens when they do fall behind? Because sooner or later that's going to happen. Maybe Oklahoma is the team that can do that to Tennessee, and then you see when you're not playing from ahead and you're pulling the strings on offense and making the defense react to what you want to do. That can slow things up a little bit. So we'll see. It could be an interesting game. That's around the SEC, brought to you by Classic Industrial Services, proudly serving Louisiana and the entire United States. You need metal siding and roofing, they got it. Steam and electric tracing services, thermal insulation services, refractory services, they got it. Large capital projects to commercial projects or your smaller quick response needs, Classic Industrial is your go-to for quality and safety. They're not just about business, they're a proud community partner supporting local initiatives and helping build a stronger Baton Rouge. Because at Classic Industrial Services, every moment matters. All right, and now we're going to get into our predictions, guys. This is how we end the show. LSU versus UCLA, we mentioned it. The betting line is LSU by 24 points at DraftKings, and the over-under is 56.5, which just seems a little bit low. 56.5 seems pretty attainable, but UCLA is a team. I mean, their defense played a little bit better than their offense so far, although they've struggled on both sides. Let's get into our predictions. They're brought to you by Waste Pro. Reed, what you got?
I went LSU 45-20, just enough to cover that 24-point spread. I think LSU is good enough to cover. I think they should cover, and I think they will, and I think that over hits just because I think LSU's offense is good enough to put up a good amount of points that can really help that over hit. So I think, LSU, it shouldn't have much trouble, but just look to see exactly how UCLA's offense looks and how LSU defends it, because that's really the most interesting part of this game, I think, is how does LSU's defense fare against an offense that they really should be able to handle. I think that's the most interesting part.
So you pick 45-20. Is the game in control at halftime?
Yes, I think so.
No boo birds at halftime.
I don't think so. No.
All right.
I think it's in control early.
Rab, what you got?
Okay, I'm gonna toot my own horn just a little bit here. Okay, I'm 1-2 on the spread. That's right. I wrote these things down. On LSU, I picked them to beat USC. They obviously said they didn't cover. I picked them not to cover against Nichols. They did. They didn't cover, and then I picked them to cover last week, and they didn't. But I'm on the over/under. I'm 3-0 with LSU.
All right.
Under, over. I'm going with the over again this week. Like you said, I think the number is a little bit low, especially with LSU's defense is concerned. I think they'll give up a big play or two and a score or two, but they win comfortably 41-17. So I'm right on the point spread number, but I'm liking LSU to hit the over. LSU looked up a couple of things. Both teams are 0 for against the spread this year, so something's got to change, right? I mean, I guess they could push, right?
They could push. Yeah,
and that's an interesting thing.
As long as it stays right on that even number of 24, you could see a push.
LSU under Brian Kelly against the spread at home is 9-2, so that's pretty good. So we'll see. See if they can hit that again and may go 10-2. Another interesting stat, and this is just the wins and losses. UCLA, I got to credit ESPN. I saw this on ESPN. UCLA is 6-1 against the SEC since 2000, the best of any team in the country. That's shocking that they would be the team.
Have they played? I mean, they played LSU 3 years ago. Who are they beating?
I don't know. I mean,
they have a home and home with Vandy or something.
I don't know. But they're 6-1. LSU is 67-2 in non-conference home games since 2000. That is the best record in the SEC.
Real quick, the two losses: Troy in 2017.
Yep.
What was the other loss? I'm blanking.
Non-conference home loss since 2000. They lost to UAB. Under Saban in his first year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
So in other words, they were both completely unexpected losses.
That's right.
People will say they should have been
music. Dun, dun, dun.
We don't expect that this week, but hey, that's why it'd be an unexpected loss. I'm actually going under, and I don't entirely know why, other than I think this is probably number one, a game where the LSU defense really wants to kind of make a statement and show that they're back on track. I think they hold UCLA down a little bit. And then number two, I also think these next 2 weeks for LSU, once you have a lead and you have the game in hand, run the ball and get the heck out of there. Don't risk any more injury. Don't risk anything else. At this point, you have 3 weeks, and it's pretty clear what the goal is. So I went 38-16 LSU. I think they mostly control the game. But I do have UCLA slightly against the spread and slightly to the under, so 38-16.
You don't want Kyron Lacey spraining an ankle. Or
no, you don't need that. I mean, you're up. Imagine being up 35-10 in the third quarter and having something like that happen. It'd be terrible. And you can't play scared or anything like that. But once you have the game in hand, let the backups play, run the ball, milk the clock. And let everybody go home happy.
Yep. And we'll see if Rab Stradamus continues his streak.
3-0 on the over-under,
just on
baby.
the over-under, not on the point spread.
Yeah.
On the over. But we're all picking UCLA to match or exceed their season high point total so far for a game, right?
Right.
Well,
you said 16.
It's like the movable object meets the resistible force.
I'm
right?
afraid
like
that's true.
They should actually probably do better than their average. So that's our show for today. We hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like button below. Subscribe to the LSU Sports on NOLA.com YouTube channel. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you're listening there. 5-star review is always appreciated. Let us know what you think about the game and give us your comments and questions anytime. Our thanks to our producer, Alex Lee. For Reed Darcey and Scott Rabalais, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching the LSU Sports Insider.